I'm basically the most unfit I've ever been, and I want to share that news with you because I feel like this is what my whole channel is about. Like, I share the good and the bad, and when I'm feeling good and when I'm not feeling as good. And I did an FTP test, came back from Gran Canaria and was straight back into it. I was like, right, let's get an FTP test done. And it was brutal, it was awful. And if any of you don't know, FTP stands for a functional threshold power, which basically is, you can test it lots of different ways, well, there's a few different ways. I do a 20-minute effort, and that then estimates what your power is for an hour. And it's basically a way of figuring out where your fitness is at so that you can then build on it with different training. And that's designed depending on what you actually want to get out of. If you want to do endurance, if you want to do racing, gravel stuff, like lots of different ways. But yeah, my 20-minute power, I've done loads of these over the years. I actually quite like doing them, but this particular one, it was not fun. It was basically my lowest ever 20-minute power. And although I'm going to caveat that with, I'm using basically a different power meter, and there is some discrepancies. Anyway, that I'm not going to blame it on that. It is just lower. And I wanted to share it because I feel like a lot of you maybe are feeling pretty unfit at the minute, especially after 2 years of lockdown. We're coming out of winter into spring, and it might be comforting to know that, yeah, a lot of us are going through it. Two of my friends specifically are having the same thing, that they feel like they're the most unfit that they've ever been. And it is frustrating. I'm not going to sit here and like, also this chair is really squeaky. You'll know for when I'm sitting here, I need to get a new chair. But yeah, I had a little like mardy moment after it. I did the 20-minute effort and was just like, oh, what's the point? What's the point? It was crap. Like, it was just, I just felt like just never getting on a bike again. It sounds so dramatic. It's like a 20-minute effort. And, but yeah, that's how I felt. And then when I thought about it more, I was like, well, let's look at this objectively. I've had 4 months off really doing anything because I was recovering from an injury, and you got to be a little bit kinder to yourself. And especially, like, you know, we've had lockdown, we've had loads of other stuff going on. So if this is you, be kind to yourself. And then the other thing was, I was like, well, I've got two options. I can just jack it all in and just never do any training again, or I can get stuck in and just like dedicate myself to becoming fitter than I was even before. And doing that test is kind of irrelevant because the numbers that you get from that don't really matter. All that matters is that then you build on that and train and use those numbers to then build on your fitness, and then for those numbers to go up. I mean, it might be good to be like, oh, what's your FTP to your friends? And then like, oh, well, mine's 500. Oh, well, mine's 400. Just joking, but you know what I mean? Like, it can be used as a bit of a bragging rights. And yeah, mine, not great at the minute. The worst, actually. And I think it also affects you mentally. It did me a little bit like that. I explained, like, I just felt like, oh, what's the point then? And my coach said that, you know, sometimes he's known people want to like just jack it all in because it's not what the numbers that they wanted or that they thought they were at, and it doesn't matter. And I kind of say this, I think you have to kind of like step back from it all and be like, it's just riding a bike. And I think that's what, I guess, that accident and stuff, all that changed for me, I guess, was I did used to be a lot more into the numbers, and it's because, not because I think, oh, I'm really fast, it's because I want to be able to do things that I want to do. And yeah, it changed my perspective. I still want to get fitter to be able to do those things, but it's made me appreciate just being able to ride outside and just being able to ride my bike and enjoy it. Also, fitness is never static. It's moving around all the time, and it's easy to build on it. So just because of where you're at now, it doesn't mean that it's going to stay there. You just need to just relax, calm, and then just get into it and get into some training if that's what you want to do. And if you're happy just riding your bike and not necessarily training for anything or doing any kind of training, that's all right too, because it is just riding a bike. I did want to share 3 little tips if you are struggling to get back on the bike, if you are coming back from an injury, if you are just not feeling great about your fitness and ability on the bike at the minute. So these are the 3 things that I would say is the one thing, the main thing, do an FTP test, because without knowing this number or where your fitness, it's just basically a marker of where your fitness is currently at. Without knowing this, you can't get better. I mean, you can, but it's easy to follow training plans knowing your FTP. I did my FTP on Zwift. It was a really good way of being able to do that. And then lots of different training plans on Zwift where you can get a coach, like I've got Mark, who does my training for me. And yeah, it's just knowing that you can improve those numbers. And I think I did this last year. I'll put a link to this video. Like, I felt similar to this last year. And in 3 weeks, my numbers were just like so much higher. Just like just doing 3 solid weeks of training. I don't recommend doing things short term, do them over long term. Little consistency. Sorry, like consistency, just like little over time gets the best results, I think. And the second thing is set yourself, I'm not saying like set yourself a goal, but like set yourself an adventure. I don't mean like a specific race that you have to come like top 3 in this race. I mean something that you really, really want to do. Like something that like really, what's the word? Like just sparks like that fire to get out and ride. And it can be anything. It could be riding to a set place, riding in a specific country, doing like a multi-day like fun event, because that is what will keep you on your training. Like for me, like I've got my like year planner of things that I want to do this year, and I think about that and I put it behind where I do Zwift and do my turbo sessions to remind me like, oh well, that's why I'm doing it. Because for me, the reason that I want to get fitter is so that I can do those things and it feel relatively easy. Not easy, but do you know what I mean? Like, okay. And then the last thing is just be kind to yourself. Like, none of us are pros. It doesn't really matter. Like, it's just numbers and it's just data and it can get in your head. But ultimately, ride your bike, have fun, and yeah, I think that's pretty much it. So I had a little word with myself about it when I was like getting too deep into it. I was like, oh, these are just terrible numbers. It really doesn't matter. So yeah, I think that is it for this video. So thank you so much for watching. Any questions, leave them in the comments as always, and I will see you next video.